You know what a scary idea is? To go into space, to explore, to go to the future, but then you wake up on this planet and then you notice all the inhabitants are talking apes. Now that's scary. That will not happen to me. I have no intention to go to space. Hello everyone, I'm Jay Mere and welcome to my ranking of all the Planet of the Apes movies. Yes, another franchise ranking video, and I'm very excited about this one because in these past years, since the last decade basically, I am a big Planet of the Apes films. I'm very fascinated by them. And now with the release of the new movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and now that I have seen all the Planet of the Apes movies, but believe it or not, some of these movies were first watches for me. Especially the sequels from the 70s. I know they existed, but I never had the intention or the urge or the desire to watch them basically. But now that I have done that, I thought this is a good time to talk about them and rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. And we have 10 movies in this franchise. It's a franchise that started way back in 1968. When this movie came, and I believe for the time it was quite a movie to come out in theaters. Can imagine that. It's a great science fiction movie from the 60s. It's a movie from the 60s. And it was instantly a classic for good reason. Then they did some sequels in the 70s to feed this ape mania that was happening back then. Then there was complete silence for 30 years. And then there was a remake. That was no success. And 10 years later, in 2011, there was a reboot, and a whole idea for a reboot franchise. And now we are 4 movies in that part of the franchise. So I can fairly say that was a success, this reboot. And it's a reboot that actually made me a fan of the Planet of the Apes. Because I have seen the 60s movie when I was a kid, thought it was cool, was fascinating. It's a movie that always fascinated me, but I never really loved it, and I couldn't really care for the sequels, the remake. Well, let's just talk about my ranking. So, we have 10 movies to cover, so let's do it. We start at the bottom of the list with actually 2 very bad movies. These are ridiculous movies. And at number 10, I have Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And this is the direct sequel to our original classic. And I can imagine it's a difficult task to make a follow-up to a very popular classic. And they did it. They tried to make a sequel to that movie, and I can say this movie sucks. It's not good. Though the first half was actually very promising. I was really into the movie the first half. I liked this idea of the second spaceship crashing in on this planet. We have a new astronaut protagonist, and then we have the return of some familiar faces from the first movie, while this astronaut is trying to figure out things. That was all very fascinating. I also really like this whole underground concept, when the characters are going underground in these tunnels. It was very cool. But then all the good stuff stopped. Because then the movie got really weird, but like really weird. We have this underground people, then there is this conflict, the apes find this underground complex, and then there was just chaos, it was a complete mess at this point, and the last half hour made this movie actually really bad, so it has to come at my last place. Just above that, we basically have another bad movie, and that's the remake. The remake directed by Tim Burton. So, in 30 years we didn't have a Planet of the Apes movie, so they thought, let's make a franchise of it again. And they hired Tim Burton to do this movie. But the movie is just ridiculous. It's ridiculously stupid. It misses everything that the original classic has. There's nothing interesting in this movie, and it all looks so stupid. Like, what I really like about the second attempt to reboot this franchise is that the actors actually try to behave and act like apes would do. And that makes the movie realistic. If I see at this movie how the apes are acting in this one, I'm constantly thinking, this is not how apes act. These are just ridiculous apes. And couldn't care for anything in this movie. It was just moments, it was even boring. And then the ending, when the movie ended, I was thinking a long time on the ending, and I can only come up with one conclusion. And it is, this movie doesn't make any sense. It's a stupid movie. So, the next two are movies that I consider good, but they are just weird installments in this franchise. And they are very close to each other, so I really had to decide which one do I like more. So, at number 8 I have Conquest. It was basically the prototype of Rise, and Conquest had a good idea, just not executed perfectly, and some things in this movie happens really quickly. There are like things missing in this movie to really understand what was going on. What I really like about this movie and the follow-up to this movie is the character of Caesar. And Paddy McDonald, he was the first actor to play Caesar before Andy Serkis did. And he actually did a very good job in portraying this character. It was very believable. He's a great actor actually. And especially the way he talks, his voice. That makes this character Caesar. And like I said, really like the premise of this whole rebellion of the apes against the humans. But it was just not a well executed movie. And at number 7, I have this follow-up, Battle of the Planet of the Apes. This is the movie that takes after Conquest, and I slightly prefer this one over Conquest. It's also a very stupid movie. There were some stupid things in this movie, but it is very entertaining, and I like to see Caesar now as the leader, taking his own tribe, his own community, trying to live in peace between apes and humans. So that was very fascinating. There were some cool action battle scenes, but it's not really a movie that I would rewatch that often. So these are the bad ones, the weird ones. The rest of these ranking are movies that I actually think are really likable, or movies that I absolutely love. And at number 6 I have Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and this is the third installment. Now this movie had even a more difficult task than the second movie, because they had to follow up a complete bad and weird direct sequel, and they actually did it very cool. They had this cool idea with our characters, Cornelius and Zero from the first movie. They go back in time, and basically this whole trilogy, Escape, Conquest, Battle, is about how the Planet of the Apes started it. And this is the first part, and I was actually very fascinated by this movie. I never thought I would like it as much as I do right now. It was a very cool idea. I love these characters of Sarah and Cornelius, and I was really entertained by how this movie was developing. So yeah, this was definitely the surprise movie. It was one of my first watches, but I was really surprised by it. So deserving of the 6th place. And number 5, this might shock you, but I have the original, the 1968 movie. And I agree that this is a classic for all the good reasons. Like I said, I was fascinated by this movie when I saw it as a kid. I always liked this idea, but I was never really entertained by the movie. The movie never made me fall in love with the Planet of the Apes, as I do with the movies above this one. But it's a cool movie. It's a good, well executed movie, directed very well. Everyone did a fantastic acting job. and it introduces us to this fascinating, interesting world. So it actually did everything right. The only problem why it's a bit at number 5 is that it's a product of its time. It's a 68 movie. And this is how they made blockbuster entertaining movies in the 60s. And I like it for what it is. But by today's standards and the movies I grew up, this movie feels a bit old and a bit dated. So that's why I never really was entertained by this movie or loved this movie. Still, great movie, but it's not a movie that I love like you will see the movies in my top 3. And at number 4, I have the new one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I almost gonna say Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but that's an whole other franchise. No, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I actually was very entertained by this movie. It's a very enjoyable movie. It's a promising start for this new trilogy they are gonna make. If you want to hear more thoughts on me on this movie, always be free to check out my review on it. Did a whole review on it. So check out that one if you're interested. So now we are at the top 3. And by now you're probably gonna know what 3 Apes movies that gonna be. And let me say this. Rise, Dawn, War, the movies that remain, these form one trilogy, the Caesar trilogy. This is one of the best film trilogies I have ever seen. Every of these 3 movies is actually a perfect movie. And I was entertained by all 3 of them. I loved all 3 of them, each on their own way. These movies made me a Caesar fan, a Planet of the Apes fan, and I love these movies. All 3 of these movies are definitely in my top 50 favorite movies of all time, and I just love them. We have the Caesar story. It starts in Rise. We see him as a little baby ape. How he starts this whole rebellion in Rise. In Dawn we see him as the leader of this community, facing a rival with this other ape, Koba, very entertaining. And then in War, a fitting conclusion, an excellent conclusion of this trilogy. We see Caesar becoming the true leader of the apes in this whole war with the humans. Fantastic trilogy. So now I have to rank them, and that was a very difficult task because they are very close to each other. And at number 3 is maybe a movie that most of you will consider as the best part of the trilogy. Now it seems like it's the weakest part for me in the trilogy, but weak is just a bad word now because it's still an excellent, fantastic movie. So at number 3 I have Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And it's just at number 3 because I like the 2 others a little bit more than Dawn. But Dawn is fantastic because of the whole rivalry between Caesar and Koba, and how Matt Reeves, the director of this one, his first Apes movie, he did an excellent job in telling this story and telling this rivalry. And there are so many things at stake in this movie. We have the conflict between the apes and the surviving humans. You have the conflict between the apes and themselves, and it's all coming together, and it's just a very beautiful told story. And you understand the hero, you understand the villain, you even understand the humans, you understand where they are coming from and what they are doing, and that makes this movie so great. All 3 of them, they are blockbusters with layers, with a dark tone to it. That makes them fantastic. And then number 2, we have maybe the darkest Planet of the Apes movie, and that's War for the Planet of the Apes. What a movie. What a fantastic movie. And even as a war movie itself, it's one of the best, because it really captured what war all is about for both parties. We have the apes, what they're going through, their motives, what they're going to do with the humans. You even understand the humans, where they are coming from, why they are doing this war, why they don't want to quit the war. And just that makes this movie great. Like I said with Dawn, it's so many motives, so many motivations, so many emotionality, and this is by far Andy Serkis at his best. The way he portrays Caesar in this one, phenomenal. I don't say this very quickly, but this was an Oscar-worthy performance by Andy Serkis. Even he plays an ape, but he plays such layered ape, and this whole movie, War of the Planet of the Apes, is a fantastic character study of Caesar. And that's why I love War for the Planet of the Apes. And my favorite Planet of the Apes movie is Rise of the Planet of the Apes. The first part of the Caesar trilogy, and this is the movie that made me fall in love with the Planet of the Apes movies, that made me fall in love with Caesar. And if you compare it with Dawn and War, it's maybe the softer of the three, the less dark, but I like it. And I like it because I like how we see Caesar growing up, how he understands the world he lives in, how he understands the humans, how he starts caring for the apes, how he sees his purpose in the movie, and especially this whole rebellion at the end, how he becomes the leader of the apes is fantastic. And so many memorable scenes in this movie for me. And also this movie, it's just a throwback to 2011 when I was in my first year at secondary school. So many great memories, and this movie is a part of those memories. So that's why it's my favorite Planet of the Apes movie, but I love the Caesar trilogy. So this was my ranking of the whole Planet of the Apes franchise. I hope you like it. Always be free to share your ranking below in the comments, because this is just my ranking. You can have a different ranking, that's okay. Curious to see your ranking, so please share. And if you want to see more rankings of me in the future, always be free to subscribe to my channel. Until the next time.